The flight from Dubai missed the runway as the pilots attempted to land. This is CCTV footage showing the moment the plane hit the ground, causing that massive explosion. After attempting to land for a second time, it's believed the plane lost speed and went into a stalled free fall. You can see the trajectory at which the plane is incoming there on the video. And the speed of that free fall estimated to be at 400 kilometers per hour. The debris field showing no large pieces. It's just a scattering of tiny pieces. Officials from the Russian Transport Ministry confirm that both black boxes of the crashed plane have now been recovered. The flight recorders register the sounds and technical data of what happened on board. It is hoped they can shed light on the exact causes of this tragedy. But it's still unknown whether any information from the black boxes can actually be recovered. RT's Roman Kozarev has more details.
Well, from the latest, we know that the investigation is ongoing. The cause of the crash is yet to be determined. Flight recorders, or commonly known as black boxes, are still unaccounted for. The search continues. We do know the names of all the victims, the passengers and crew, all 62 people. At the moment, we are departing from Vnukovo Airport along with the head of the Russian Emergency Ministry. We are also accompanied by so-called special forces of the Russian Emergency Ministry, a unit called Leader. They're going with us as well as the Russian Investigative Committee. They will be traveling to Rostov with us.
The airline Fly Dubai has now confirmed that its plane bound for Rostov-on-Don did crash on landing, causing multiple fatalities. That's according to a statement published on its official Facebook page. The company says it's working closely with the authorities and will make all details public as they become available. The Boeing company has also issued a statement saying their prayers are with those on board and the relatives. The company also says it's ready to provide technical assistance. Fly Dubai is a low-cost carrier founded in 2008 by the Dubai government. The company's head office is in the Dubai International Airport. The airline flies to 95 destinations in the Middle East, Africa, Asia and Europe. The company operates 50 planes. All of them are Boeing 737-800s. And last year, the airline carried more than 9 million passengers. So this is the first deadly incident involving a Fly Dubai jet. There have been some peculiar occurrences with the company in the past. About 2 weeks ago, one of its Boeings returned to Dubai after the left engine overheated to the maximum temperature. A month earlier, the crew spotted 2 missiles coming from the direction of an airbase in Saudi Arabia, but the plane did make a safe landing. In January 2015, a Boeing with 150 passengers was landing in Baghdad when shots were fired and hit the plane, causing some damage. The aircraft managed to land without further incident. And in 2014, while flying to Kiev, a Fly Dubai plane caught fire. The crew completed the landing despite heavy smoke in the cabin. The airport in Rostov-on-Don is relatively small. It is the only international airport in that region. It was built 90 years ago, but since 2002 has been undergoing heavy reconstruction and renovation. It's located just 8 kilometers from the city center and is surrounded by residential buildings. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his deep condolences to the families of those killed in the plane crash. He also ordered the head of the Emergencies Ministry as well as the governor of Rostov-on-Don to do everything necessary for those families. The president was briefed on the investigation already taking place at the airport. We'll give you the updates the very moment we get them here on RT International. Russian TV channel, that of REN TV, spoke to a man who saw the Fly Dubai plane immediately before it crashed. We can hear what he said now.
I was sitting in my car. The wind was extremely strong. And then I saw a plane attempting to land. I thought to myself, the wind is so strong that my car is swinging. How come the airport is not closed? I drove away, but half an hour later, I found out that the plane had crashed. So judging by the time I saw it, it was the very plane that I saw.
We've also heard from the governor of the Rostov region.
At the moment, the main version of the tragedy remains the same. It's believed bad weather conditions are to blame. The crash site is being investigated. We have all the necessary resources to conduct a proper investigation and to support the people whose relatives were on that plane.
Earlier, we spoke to John Cox, a pilot and chief executive officer at the Safety Operating Systems. He told us about the dangers of flying in tough weather.
There are warning systems in the 737-800 for dangerous wind conditions known as wind shear. That would be available to them. They would be carefully navigating using the flight management computer and system. And they would be very carefully aligning the airplane with the runway and looking to see what the wind is doing. The airplane will display the wind velocity and direction so that they have an understanding about what external forces are being applied to the airplane. It is not at all uncommon during inclement weather to go hold and then await better weather conditions. This is routinely done, and it's done very safely. So if the landing visibility was above the minimum requirements, it would be normal for the crew to, if in their judgment they could proceed safely, to attempt a second landing attempt. Once you make more than 2 approaches at a runway, pilots will generally then become pretty skeptical about it because the weather's not getting any better. They're consuming fuel, and oftentimes they'll divert. But making 2 approaches to a runway during inclement weather is not uncommon at all. You shoot the approach, meaning that you align the airplane with the runway using the instruments. You descend to the minimum altitude, and from that point, it requires you visually seeing the runway to land on it. And if you don't see the runway at that point, then you execute a missed approach and you fly a carefully detailed track across the ground as you climb back up to altitude and either go hold for a little bit or to come back and make another attempt to land on the runway. But this is all normal procedures for pilots. It's always the captain's decision as to what occurs with the airplane. Always the captain is the final authority. So it would be the captain that would decide, 1, to make the missed approach, and 2, whether they would divert or whether they would go hold and make a second attempt for the runway. Fly Dubai is a relatively young carrier. They have picked up pilots from all over the world. Their pilots tend to be very experienced. Their training is reported to be very good. The pilots from Fly Dubai that I have met have been very professional. So I would characterize them as a good, solid, safe airline, and I would fly on Fly Dubai without a second thought. I would not rule in or rule out anything. As an investigator, you have to keep a very open mind, and so as the investigators arrive there, they that will tell us the story. Likelihood give us the cause.
There are 2 main versions of the cause of the crash. One of them is the mistake of the crew, which circled over the city for almost 2 hours after failing to land for the first time. Another one is that of technical malfunction. The team was believed to be quite experienced, and dealing with windy weather was a regular part of their job. Well, independent aviation consultant Jerry Sajatman now joining us live here on RT International. Jerry, thanks for coming on the program today. We understand now that both black boxes have been recovered. How long do you think it'll take to decode the data and identify exactly what happened?
To pull out the data and parse it out to know what happened in terms of factual information, that can take as quick as 1 week or even just 2 or 3 days if there's no problem with the flight data recorder. But then they will come up with a preliminary report within 1 month. But then as to the final analysis and all that, all the contributory factors and all that, that will be on a final report, which will be probably about a year.
Jerry, the crashed plane spent more than 2 hours trying to land. Why do you think it spent such a long time circling in a holding pattern and didn't just simply head to another different nearby airport?
Well, one question that would be raised is the crew familiar with the airport? Have the crew itself landed there previously in their career? during certain weather conditions, or similar to the one today. Because yes, I mean, like in tropical areas, as an example, you can have bad visibility and severe winds, but it only lasts for about an hour. And in some of the places that Dubai flies to, that is the pattern. But it doesn't mean that you can apply the same rule everywhere. In this case, obviously they spent 2 hours. But they spent 2 hours between, but they also spent at least an hour between the first landing and the second attempt. So it's they seem to be pretty determined to not divert. Now the question is, why did they make the second attempt then? If they had waited for so long, why did they make it then? Were they coming up to, into a point where they're going to run out of fuel and they have to divert somewhere soon, so they have to make the second attempt, or whether they have to? I mean, there are so many questions at the moment.
Well, Jerry, I wanted to ask you again, we've been showing the CCTV footage showing the trajectory of the plane incoming on the second attempt when it tried to make the landing. We're showing the pictures right now. The angle that it comes in at is extremely steep, and other aviation officials we've spoken to say that is not a normal angle of approach. That looks like the plane lost power, was in a potential free fall. How does that happen during the approach to land at the airport?
Okay, Rostov-on-Don has a reputation of being a bit turbulent during windy weather, so it can be a bit of a handful, and it shows on the approach charts that increased turbulence and wind shear may be expected on final. So therefore, the turbulence can be worse as you go down lower. Now, if you've been holding for quite some time, you might have some fatigue setting in on you, and you will have difficulty in controlling the aircraft. Here, I don't think that the steep trajectory is due to the aircraft losing power. There are already data being put out from the aircraft ADSB, that is the information that the aircraft transmits out, that the descent rate at some stage went to over 20,000 feet per minute, which is very, very fast. And I do not think that will be caused by a loss of power. I think this possibly, and I fear that it is, a case of the pilot actually losing having special disorientation prior to the landing because of the conditions. It's rare, but it's not. But it has happened.
Now, Jerry, this 737-800 is considered to be like one of the most standard workhorses of the skies. Has the plane model been linked with any technical issues in particular in the past that you know of?
Nothing that can translate into something like this, like a steep dive to the ground. But yes, there have been allegations of weakening structural strength of the aircraft when there were several other accidents when the airplane came apart into several very clean-cut pieces. But again, I think that's mainly to do with the modern construction methods. But no, I mean, there has been nothing like the previous 737, the classic series have had a rudder issue that caused some accidents. But no, with regards to the current generation, the 800, no, there hasn't been any design faults or design weaknesses that I know of.
Jerry, the airport in Rostov-on-Don, the Rostov-on-Don airport, it was already closed once this winter due to bad weather. Why do you think the airport wasn't closed this time around? I mean, clearly, when you're having a plane, the air control tower, they tell the plane to go into a holding pattern for 2 hours. Perhaps the airport itself should have been closed.
It depends on the country. I'm not sure about the rules in Russia, but there are several countries where the airport does close itself. But in a lot of countries, airports don't close due to weather. They just allow they give the decision to the pilot. So this is probably one of those cases. And yeah, we've had other airplanes attempting to land. I know at least one Aeroflot aircraft diverted after 2 attempts as well on the same evening. But no, it does depend on the rules and regulation of that particular country.
All right, Jerry, so gentlemen, an independent aviation consultant joining us here on RT International. Thank you so much for your time and insight today. Thank you.